His work and his philosophy have been a guide to how human capacity and labor may be nurtured, how natural resources may be valued, how economies may be viewed for prosperity and not for singular profits and growth. So today, as part of Laurie Baker's centenary celebrations that are being celebrated across the country in many parts, in many cities, in an environment where India is gearing up to be a global leader, we discuss the relevance of his work and his philosophy to build a future for our children and to the leadership we may aspire for.
I think we say one thing and we end up often not actually, just telling people that you do this isn't going to actually necessarily lead to results. There has to be some reason why you do it. Some of it is because it's efficient. It's the sort of thing I want to do because it saves me money. And others is because I aspire to something, and one of the things that drives aspiration is that this is what is in fashion, or this is what I think other people will think is original, give me brownie points for it, and somehow we are not doing either of these. Now, let me just say that this word efficient that I just said, I really believe that the word efficient is often badly used. It's a word economists love to use. Much of economics is about efficiency. But somehow you will often get the notion of there are certain things like sustainability, that's on one side, there's growth on the other hand, which is on the other side, and the two actually fight with each other. In fact, if there is anything which is common between growth and sustainability, it is being efficient. And this is, I think, where the difference really lies. Is why should the guy, that is, why should Laurie Baker be telling his clients that do it in a cheaper way? What is it that makes you deliver something which is desirable, efficient, and the reason you're doing it is to say that you've got what you want and you've got it at the cost of something you haven't paid. Okay, at the cost of something which nobody has paid. If you could do something like this, you've obviously done wonders. You've actually saved not only your client, you've saved a lot of other people things which would have otherwise become more expensive. Unfortunately, I think there's no market for it.
This Patricia, white person, was actually arguing with Dr. Nambudiri, whose building you just saw beneath, you just showed it on the screen, Dr. Nambudiri. Dr. Nambudiri was a mathematics professor. He had 5 children. So Dr. Nambudiri wanted a 6-bedroom house. I still remember Laurie gesturing to this professor. He said, Dr. Nambudiri, you have 5 children. All of them are very academically focused. They're very good in studies. They will all fly away after some time. And finally, the old man and the old woman will be alone in this house. Do you really mean to say that you want a 6-bedroom house? But Dr. Nambudiri was very adamant. He said, it's my building, it's my money. I want 1 bedroom each for my children, for them to study and do well. So I want a 6-bedroom house. Dr. Nambudiri didn't heed to Laurie's words, and he built a 6-bedroom house for himself and his family. Why I remember this particular building was much later after I became an architect. After I started my own organization, way later, probably a couple of decades later, I had the opportunity to go to this house again. All the 5 children have gone abroad. They're very successful professionals working all over the world now. One of them was the personal physician to Obama, the US president. And when the house was looking dirty, cobwebs, dust all around, it looked abandoned. And the old lady was there, and I started talking to him. And I asked her, out of my thing, why this building was looking dirty. She said, Dr. Nambudiri is no more, he is gone. All the files will run away, and my age, I can't climb up the steps. It's a 3-story building, I can't climb up the spiral stairs, and there's nobody to help me. And then I remembered Laurie's words, who said, why do you need 6 bedrooms? Politically, it may be of some interest to you. I was actually opposed to Laurie in the beginning, because I thought he was an extension of the colonial legacy. It's my feeling, it's my conviction, even at my age, that colonial architecture, especially in my place, Kerala, they had built many beautiful buildings, colleges, institutions, where they consciously used cultural symbols, like the ones you saw, gable ends, beautiful lattices, wooden lattices, the pride of Kerala's vernacular architecture. They brought it judiciously, intelligently into the vocabulary, building vocabulary, materials vocabulary. And that, I thought, was a kind of conquest on our senses. It was kind of to subjugate the local population by using symbols that could please them and do that. So initially I thought Laurie was doing that. But later, I found out through his buildings that he was trying to promote what I call as living architecture. Let me tell you this. It was, if I remember right, it was the German philosopher who talked about the infinite distances between 1 and 0. Laurie was the only person in my life I've met where there was no difference between word and the deed.
The first, I think the most important aspect of Laurie Baker that comes out is a very strong sense of ethics and empathy that permeated his entire life's work. And the second is the notion of innovation, which again is very central to what he did. And let me try and walk you through how these notions actually work out in the kind of the economic and political landscape that we have or are in the process of developing for ourselves. Let's talk about ethics and empathy. Ethics are intensely personal things. We talk about corporate ethics, we talk about organizational ethics, but ultimately ethics are embedded in humans and individuals. If you notice, when we talk about Laurie Baker and Laurie Baker buildings, we're talking about an individual. We are not talking about a school of which Laurie Baker was a part. He was a school unto himself, right? But when we talk about institutions, we talk about ways or models of doing things. We are talking about things which are larger than the human, than the individual. And the question that arises, that if ethics are embedded in human beings and empathy is the outcome of two human beings, two or more human beings interacting with each other, should we or should we not be thinking about the ways we organize ourselves in the various dimensions of our existence? That's thought one. Thought two, innovation. Innovation is again an intensely individual thing. It's what individual human beings do. You can embed innovations in larger organizations, but ultimately it's the individual who does it. And the question we need to ask is that if we value innovation, if we think innovation is important, then what should be the organizational structures that we should be developing for ourselves? I'm talking about the mom and pop store. I'm talking about the Billy Pan wala outside. He's innovating. He's innovating because he has to survive. He goes bust. He then tries something new. Innovation is constantly happening. And it happens really at the micro level. And if we really value these qualities that Laurie Baker embodied, then we really need to rethink about our development and economic discourse. Thank you.
This is something that has bothered me for very long, of the right scale. The right scale for our cities, the right scale for our industries, the right scale for our utilities, the right scale. And somehow one is always sort of pushed down by the economies of scale argument, which sort of grows and never comes down to something which is right. I don't know whether constant enlargement, we haven't yet reached that. So that was something that I thought that sort of occurred to me, and maybe that's something that the panel might want to also comment on what they're thinking of.
Laurie is unknowingly influenced my life. And Vineet, I don't know whether you know that I was probably in 9th or 10th standard when one among his first buildings collapsed. That's the Loyola School nursery building in Trivandrum. I saw it collapse in front of my eyes. The gentleman came within about 3 or 4 hours, and we kids were staying in the hostel. What one learned of Laurie as a human being at that point of time, the modesty, the humility, the professionalism with which he approached a problem. And that's what influenced me. That collapse, he stood there on site, accepted the mistake, took professional steps of what correction needed to be done. And I can tell you, 10 years later when I became an engineer, the first lintel I constructed collapsed. And I remembered Laurie.
It's all very fine, this amazingly good work, but it's a good work which hasn't spread. And that there is a problem there somewhere. And the problem has been attributed to we didn't go far enough. We started in hardcore, we didn't go far enough. Politicians thumped it. Or that, it really needs a passion and somehow we can't inculcate it in society. I think all of those might be true. But for me, I think the question is not one of scale necessarily. Yes, as Pronab said, the further you get away from, who makes big decisions to the guy who builds and the guy who uses. There are 3 points to the triangle. The further you get, the more likely you're going to have all sorts of problems coming up. And that will not give you a Laurie Baker. It will give you something else. Now, take Laurie Baker's idea. There is in Hyderabad, among the various things HUDCO helped to do, a place where there must be almost 100 designs for the Indira Awas Yojana houses. And some of them are beautiful. I don't know whether any of them have to do with Laurie Baker himself, But some of them are certainly hugely influenced by him. It's a beautiful village, it's a beautiful place to go to, and the designs are amazing. Some are better, some are not that good, but the designs are amazing. We could do that. But you go to any Indira Awas Yojana thing, it looks more like our normal town growing up. You couldn't see worst architecture, however you define it. People are building things they want. They are obviously satisfied with it in some sense. And they are probably not even informed that they could have done it in a certain way. Part of the reason could be standards and getting into government Bibles. But I don't think that's the entire story. I think it's partly to do with the fact that we haven't actually worked out a manner in which you can tell the person. I mean, for example, I remember during the tsunami episode, suddenly a lot of houses had to be constructed, especially in the Andamans and parts of Tamil Nadu. And an issue came up that these houses will have to be constructed. How will they be constructed? Whether or not you give the money to the people to build their own thing, or the PWD goes and does it, or how do you do it? Who is the agency? What should the government do? What should be the design? I think some places, especially in Andaman, got it roughly right. They gave a set of designs, communities chose it, you got a set of things which looked reasonably well. But it was far too little. Somewhere along the line, and I think this is true about a lot of our decision making, we've got to ask who makes the final decision, what they want, what is sufficient. Of course, government has to say, this is the only money you've got. You've got to also give them the idea of what is affordable at that. But then, you've got to have an architecture which says, you choose, rather than I tell you what to do.
Contributions of Laurie, I believe that the legacy that he left, in terms of changing our concepts, the context, the paradigm changes that he made in the design solutions. For instance, for the mass housing schemes, he always insisted on a menu of designs, hundreds of designs. And he would prepare a manual of hundreds of designs, and he will ask the beneficiary, the client, to choose it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what should be done.
Now, what happened after that, I mean, after he started doing this menu of designs, was then Chief Minister of Kerala, C.H. Chidambaram, who started this, who gave Laurie great privilege of building this Center for Development Studies. He asked him to prepare a manual, an engineering manual, the Bible, as we call it, talking about cost-effective specifications, talking about the kind of intervention, engineering interventions that should come into government buildings. It became a part of, mandatory part of our PWD schedule. It was kind of a performance approach manual. And this particular exercise was continued. I mean, for all the massive housing schemes that we have in our state, we have this continuous exercise. For the decentralized planning exercise that happened, we are talking about huge numbers, hundreds of thousands of buildings. We had this manual right in position, talking about one chapter was on the menu of design, one chapter was the menu of specifications, materials that you could use, but always we had a template, always insisting on sustainability on one part, efficiency on one part, energy efficiency on one part, eco-sensitivity on one part, and we were actually raising a huge slogan as a part of this thing, habitat literacy, going beyond the walls, going beyond the building, talking about soil management, talking about water management, talking about efficient spaces, talking about environment sensitiveness and stuff like that. And that, I think, is the greatest contribution of Laurie.
Choose what kind of things they want, it's not just housing. A lot depends on what is conditioning their point of view. How are they building their aspirations? What is it that they're looking at? So we really need to ask the question that what is the nature of public demand? If you don't control that discourse, forget about all of this stuff. You can design all you want till you're blue in the face, it's not going to be taken up. In Kerala, it's been taken up for a historical reason, because Laurie was there. It's not going to be taken up anywhere because the templates are being set by other people. Yeah.